was a dear soul. For most of his adult life, he had been a highly skilled and successful machinist. A machinist is a person who operates machine tools to create, to repair, or to modify parts of machines, instruments, and tools, especially those made out of metal. He had great precision in his work. He was highly technical and was also highly artistic, using his tools and skills to create metal artwork, some of which he entered into the Texas State Fair and won awards year after year after year. He also made the cross and the flame for the front of the church, and another one for the pool that we had in the courtyard that was used for outdoor baptisms in the summer. He earned great respect in the congregation and in the community for his artistry and his skill, his integrity, and his dedication to the life of the church. Everybody loved Lloyd. Everybody respected Lloyd. Everybody knew Lloyd. However, unbeknownst to everyone, including his wife and his kids, over several years, his vision had begun to wane. He didn't know it, but he had diabetes. And while the neuropathy had been giving him trouble in his fingers, what really impacted him was the progressive loss of sight. He described it to me as a narrowing of his field of vision, like he was looking through an increasingly long and narrow tube with blackness all around, and he could only see through the ends of those tubes. He could still function to do his work. He had to pay attention, but he could even drive, although, frankly, I'm glad I wasn't around at the time when I found out he was going progressively blind. But then one day, while he was working on a metal lathe, his vision suddenly narrowed in the course of just a few seconds, all the way to nothing. And when that happened, he sliced off 2 fingers off of one hand. It was a disaster in so many ways. His work, what he loved to do, he couldn't do anymore. He lost his fingers and he lost his eyesight. Now, the man's memory was amazing. He could describe what a sunset looked like, or how a person looked, or how to get from the house to the church. He could walk around the church almost without any help at all. Although he had a stick, he rarely used it. The only thing he used it for was to guard from running into people. And then he knew how to use that stick, by the way. I met Lloyd about 10 years after he went blind. And he had developed all sorts of methods of helping him through his life day to day. He had to have people drive him places, but he could function on a day-to-day basis. He couldn't work at his trade any longer, and he felt great loss for that. And because of his neuropathy, he had trouble typing even, and loss of fingers he had to adjust for. But I said his memory was amazing, and he could hear things that few people could hear. You could tell him a story, and he could repeat it back to you in his own words and get every piece of it right. He also had an incredible discernment for people's emotions, by how their voices sounded, how their voices would tremble when they would speak. Lloyd was amazing. He could still do things that nobody ever thought a blind man could do. For instance, someone had to check to make sure that the batteries and the bulbs for the electric candles worked for Christmas Eve services. And guess who did that? Yes, the blind man, Lloyd. How, you may ask? We'd be working in the fellowship hall, setting things up, tables, chairs, tablecloths, and all, and he would be sitting there with the box of electric candles. And he would take one, turn it on, and hold it up. And somebody in the room would say yes or no, and then he would turn it off and set it either in the yes box or in the no box. And he would sort through one after another. It was amazing to watch the blind man check the candles to see if they were working. Wow, Lloyd. As I said, Lloyd had incredible vision, not physical vision. He couldn't see with his eyes, but he could see with his ears, his touch, his mind, his soul. Lloyd would sit in church council meetings, and when there would be a dispute on what was being said or what had ever been said over the last several months, everybody would turn to look at Lloyd, and he would tell you what was said. And he would always be right. Lloyd could always solve a dispute or a disagreement. Everybody knew that he had better, true inward vision than they did. He was spectacular at discerning personalities, characters, and intentions. He knew when you were sad, when you were happy, when you were troubled, and when you were lying. I could never get anything past Lloyd. I would walk into the church, he'd be in the fellowship hall drinking coffee with some of the other guys. He said he often needed to have his fishing waders at those coffee sessions. And I would come in and I would say, "Good morning, gentlemen." And he would say, "How are you doing, Pastor?" And I said, "I'm doing fine." And he said, "Stop lying." And I never knew how he knew it. But Lloyd could hear it in my voice. You couldn't keep a secret from him. In many ways, Lloyd could see better than those of us who had functioning eyes. He could see with his mind and with his soul. And there was very little that Lloyd ever missed. Something similar is happening here in the story with Bartimaeus. Blind Bartimaeus, a blind beggar, knew better than most that Jesus could heal him. And when he heard that Jesus was coming by there in Jericho, he cried out for that healing, "Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me." Those around him tried to shut him up, but he wouldn't be shut up. "Son of David, have mercy on me," he cried out. He cried out for help, and Jesus gave it. "Call him here," Jesus said. And they called the blind man, saying to him, "Take heart, get up, he's calling you." So throwing off his cloak, he sprang up and came to Jesus. Lloyd could do that just by the voice. He knew where I would be standing. Lloyd could do that, just get up and come right to you. Even if I'd only said a couple of words a minute earlier, he knew where I was by hearing me. "What do you want me to do for you?" Jesus asked him. And the blind man said to him, "My teacher, let me see again." Jesus said, "Go, your faith has made you well." And immediately he regained his sight and followed him on the way. He regained his sight. And yet Bartimaeus had a sight that no one else had. He could see in faith. Jesus, he had better sight than anyone. He could discern what his need was. He had better sight than anyone. He knew who to ask for help. So often we are blind. Maybe not physically, but spiritually and emotionally, we are blind to the reality of the world around us. Sometimes we're willfully blind. Sometimes we're just ignorantly blind to the needs, the concerns, the hopes, and the dreams of those around us. We often don't see ourselves as the world sees us. We think we're all that in a bag of chips, but we're not. The world looks at Christians and sees judgmental, narrow-minded, ignorant, unaccepting, and unwelcoming bigots. Those are harsh evaluations. But that's how the world sees most of us, most of the time, and for good reasons. Many Christians exemplify those harsh characterizations. So much and so often that it's hard to shed ourselves of them, even when they're not at all true of us. Most of the time. And we're frequently blind to why others say these things about us. Self-awareness is a real problem for many Christians. It's no secret, and we've made it no secret, that when my husband and I came into this community, into Des Moines, there were some people who questioned whether or not he and I were really married. Were we the real deal? Why? Because so often Christians have tried to lure people of the LGBT community into their churches, and then the bait and switch hits. Aha, now you're a filthy, rotten sinner and you've got to change. You're welcome here, but then you've got to change. I understand why there was skepticism and doubt. Christians have earned it. We're not really self-aware of who and what we are and how we are viewed in this world. Not only do we not see ourselves as the world sees us, we don't even see our community around us as it really is. We tend to approach others with our preconceptions and our biased notions about who others really are or what they need, without even bothering to talk with them, without even bothering to sit and listen to them. It's one of the things I love about the meal downstairs on Tuesday night. It gives us an opportunity to sit and to talk and to know them, and they us. And then we realize it's not so much them and us, it's all of us. We are all children of God in need of God's love. We can see the blindness, the spiritual and emotional blindness, the lack of self-awareness in our politics as a society, in our language, and how we treat others, and how we divide ourselves and polarize ourselves into us and to them without realizing that we are all children of the living God. In truth, we are more blind than Bartimaeus. Just like my friend Lloyd couldn't see to drive a car, but could really see far better than me, so also we need to have our spiritual inner and emotional sight restored. We must regain our willingness to look and to see those in our midst as they really are, the beautiful children of God. We must see what is really important and not just what is comfortable or expected. We must attempt to take a hard look at ourselves and see what's really there. Many of you have seen this cross. I've worn it since I got here. I've worn this cross preaching for years. This cross was given to me by the Brothers of the Society of St. John the Evangelist. And it's worn right here over my heart to remind me that I'm to be guided. My heart is to be guided. My spirit is to be guided. My will is to be guided by the love of God that became known to us in the life, the ministry, and the death and resurrection of Christ. We need to have our vision restored, our spiritual vision restored by the love of God. And we do that by being open to God's will, open to God's grace. in this political season, with an election looming, are we willing to take a stark, painful look at reality, set aside our comfortable fictions, and see what's really happening in our midst? See what's really being said or not said? Who's really being hurt? Who's benefiting? And what our action or our inaction will cause? Will we have the faith of Bartimaeus to cry out to Jesus, to have the grace of God open our inner eyes, to look and to see and to accept and then to do, following the way of Christ, the way of faith, the way of hope, the way of mercy, the way of love? This polarization of us and them, this division in our nation and our society, causes blindness amongst us all. Blindness to the humanity and the childhood of God that is in each one of us, the imago Dei, the image of God that resides in each neighbor, regardless of how they vote. Can we have our spiritual sight renewed, restored, to see and to embrace the children of God everywhere, and especially those right here amongst us and just outside these walls? May we cry out with Bartimaeus, Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on us. Give us our spiritual sight back. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. And may God's people say, in your presence, Lord.